Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Friday, November 14th, 2014, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here are tonight's top stories.
Tonight, evidence surfaces that proves the Cadillac tax lie was specifically planned out with Barack Obama's blessing. Then, the KKK threatens Ferguson protesters with lethal force and sweeping amnesty, an impeachable offense. All that plus much more up next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Well, we think it's about time for Obama to check his privilege, his executive privilege, that is. And of course, now that the Republicans have taken over Congress, he is going to have to use his pen and his phone even more so than usual. Now, we warned you about Obama's five-finger death punch that's coming during our live election coverage. We've got sweeping amnesty, Obamacare hikes, and apparently it looks like we're going to be starting a war with Syria any day now. Now, the Obama administration has finally admitted that its original strategy to deal with ISIS just isn't going to work, and ultimately it's about removing Bashar al-Assad from power. Now, this new strategy was formed by Obama's national security team, and it ignores the fact that al-Assad and the Syrian military represent the only tenable opposition to the Islamic State and other Islamist groups. Now, these groups, obviously, they're funded and trained by the United States and its partners, most notably Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey. So just like with Iraq and Libya and others, the evil dictators are going to be taken out, of course, creating a power vacuum, so then a Western-backed democratic government can be set up in its place. Now, we've been telling you that this is what ISIS is all about, a Western-backed front group that's meant to destabilize the region. That's why they had that accidental resupply that fell into the hands of ISIS. But do you want to know just how much of a national security threat ISIS is to America? Just take a look at this picture. On Thursday, the House Armed Services Committee met to discuss the war against the Islamic State. Both Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, made appearances to testify on U.S. military action against the Islamic State. Despite that, many representatives just didn't stick around for the entire hearing. Must have been cocktail hour. So this is how much Congress cares about what we're going to do about the Islamic State, because it's just this huge threat. The only thing that's probably going for Obama right now is that the Republicans do control Congress. So, of course, he might not have to convince them to go to war under false pretenses. But let's take a look at what the old hope and change Obama of yesteryear thought about the use of executive privilege.
The biggest problems that we're facing right now have to do with George Bush trying to bring more and more power into the executive branch and not go through Congress at all. And that's what I intend to reverse when I'm President of the United States of America. There are enough laws on the books by Congress that are very clear in terms of how we have to enforce our immigration system. I know some people want me to bypass Congress and change the laws on my own.
So an excellent mashup there by the Washington Free Beacon. But my, how things have changed. Now Obama is set to pass sweeping amnesty. Sources are saying it could happen as early as next week. Of course, perfectly timed with the grand jury's decision in the Michael Brown case, right? Can't let a good crisis go to waste now, can we? Now, Obama's amnesty is rumored to include not only Dreamers, but their parents. This means that upwards of 4.5 million illegal immigrant adults with U.S.-born children can be allowed to stay. And this, of course, is in addition to countless millions. Now, no word yet on how this is going to hurt our economy or how we're actually going to be able to sustain all of this. But on last night's Fox News Kelly File, Charles Krauthammer said that amnesty via executive order is an impeachable offense. He blamed the supine Congress that's been unresponsive at other grabs of executive power, like Obama unilaterally changing Obamacare about 30 times after it had already passed. So we'll just have to wait and see if there's going to be any more power grabs.
This idea of prosecutorial discretion is really a travesty. It is intended for extreme cases where it's unusual incident, unusual circumstances, and you say, okay, we're going to give this person a pass. It was never intended to abolish a whole class of people subject to a law and to essentially abolish whole sections of a law. And that's exactly what's happening here.
But Obama doesn't care that we're a nation of laws. He'll just rewrite them however he sees fit. And that's why the next sucker punch that's coming to America is going to be this big bundle of lies that is Obamacare. Now, rates for this year are supposed to be announced tomorrow, of course, a Saturday and post-election, so conveniently. So we'll be feeling those effects of the death punch here probably starting in 2015. But even though most mainstream media outlets are not covering this, we will, of course. Dems are quickly distancing themselves from this man. But here's another one of Obamacare architect Jonathan Gruber's embarrassing admissions. Now, on June 13, 2012, Gruber was interviewed by Frontline. He told them that the Cadillac tax issue was addressed in 2009. Obama, who was in the room, knew it was going to be a problem, and they all agreed to lie about it.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage.
How in the world can this be HIPAA compliant? Which HIPAA is designed to protect the patient's privacy, and this explicitly says in order to continue, you have to accept this condition that you have no privacy or no reasonable expectation of privacy.
3 different people were given access to her account, her address, and her Social Security number.
And John Kerry said, no, we're going to tax your health insurance. We're going to tax those evil insurance companies. We're going to impose a tax that if they sell health insurance that's too expensive, we're going to tax them. And conveniently, the tax rate will happen to be the marginal tax rate under the income tax code. So basically, it's the same thing. We just tax the insurance companies. They pass it on higher prices. That offsets the tax break we get. It ends up being the same thing. It's a very clever, basic exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter.
Well, first off, the bill has 10 years of tax increases, about $500 billion, with 10 years of Medicare cuts, about $500 billion, to pay for 6 years of spending.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period.
But for the average person, many of folks who don't have health insurance initially, they're going to have to make some choices, and they might end up having to switch doctors, in part because they're saving money.
The Supreme Court is going to take that case, and the question is, are they going to stick to the way it was written, or are they going to rewrite it?
The interesting thing about the bill, all 2,000 pages of it, it's a gigantic blank check.
Their insurance is stronger, better, more secure than it was before.
Premiums go up. Employers not going to want to pay those premiums. They're going to pass on as much as possible to the employee.
We said, well, that's pretty much the same thing. But why does it matter? I said, you'll see. And they were both in that passed. These American voters are too stupid to understand the difference. These American voters are too stupid to understand the difference. It's real cost control that we know it'll work. Go after this. Now, the problem is it's a political nightmare. And people say, no, you can't tax my benefits. It feels like. So what we did a lot in that room was think about, how could we make this work? And Obama's like, he's really a realistic guy. He's like, look, I can't just do this. He said, it's just not going to happen politically. The bill will not pass. How do we manage to get there through phase-ins and other things? And we talked about it. And he was just very interested in that topic. And once again, that ultimately became the genesis of what's called the Cadillac tax in the healthcare bill, which I think is one of the most important and bravest parts of the healthcare law, and doesn't get nearly enough credit. Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass.
Now, the White House reached out to left-wing reporters to deny that Gruber had a role, saying he didn't work at the White House. Very nice play on words there. But it's already been reported that Gruber was paid around $400,000 for his work on the bill, and White House logs show him in a meeting with the president for 4 hours. So this story is really no longer about Jonathan Gruber. It's about the deliberate lie that the president used to pass this monstrosity of a healthcare law. So what's the big deal with this law? Why did they need for the stupid American public to have no idea what was in this in order for it to pass? Well, here are a few things that the White House doesn't want you to know about Obamacare. And this is also, of course, why the president kept changing the law and why things have been pushed back until after the election. We can expect huge deficits and new taxes in order to cover the $1.4 trillion Obamacare costs that are going to happen over the next decade. Obamacare has added more than 20 new taxes, totaling over $500 billion. Obamacare also includes 159 new boards and agencies to restrict and govern your healthcare choices. More Orwellian government overreach. And of course, penalties will rise. The individual mandate, currently, you can pay either $95 or 1% of your income, whatever is higher, for this year. And then next year, that is set to triple. And people who have cheaper versions of Obamacare plans are going to be seeing some serious rate hikes. And the employer mandate will take effect. And of course, as we've reported, this mandate is going to lead to fewer full-time employees being hired. So, of course, add all this to the millions of illegal immigrants that are being granted amnesty and thereby qualifying them for Obamacare and, of course, the expanded Medicaid program, which is, of course, going to be covered by the taxpayer. And we really think with all of this, it is about time for Obama to check his privilege. Now, another surprise that is making its way through the Senate this week is a so-called NSA reform bill. It was written by Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy, and it's supported by Ted Cruz. Now, the bill purports to rein in NSA's ability to monitor the communications of Americans. However, Senator Rand Paul says it's too weak, and he notes that it will, in fact, extend the sunset clause on the Patriot Act, which is the very legislation under which the NSA has justified mass domestic spying. Now, Paul says that he's going to oppose the bill unless the Patriot Act provision is removed and the reforms strengthened to properly restrict the NSA's collecting and carrying out this bulk collection of Americans' phone records. Now, we all know how Paul feels about drones, but how does he feel about the Justice Department's use of secret cell phone dragnet surveillance? Now, this is a program that's been in operation since 2007 by the U.S. Marshals Service, and it uses Cessna aircraft with devices that emulate cell phone towers. They're flown out of 5 metropolitan airports, and this gives the planes the ability to cover most of the United States. Now, the Wall Street Journal report says that the program is intended to track the movement of suspected drug dealers. In the process, of course, however, data on thousands of people that are not under investigation or subject to court wiretapping warrants is collected. So basically, these planes trick your phone into connecting with their strong signal, and they just sweep up all of your data. So much for that Fourth Amendment. But maybe they're going to be able to do away with all of these tracking devices soon to track all the evildoers, right? Los Angeles police are already employing pre-crime tools to know when the bad guys are likely to strike. Now, they're using a program dubbed Laser for its ability to zero in on offenders and hotspots, and it's one of many newer law enforcement tools that use data tracking and collection, such as license plate scanners and cell phone trackers, often with little public knowledge or regulation. Privacy advocates say Laser isn't transparent, has no clear oversight, and unjustly focuses on keeping ex-convicts under suspicion even though they've served their time. Laser also uses Palantir technology to speed up the process of building a dossier on criminals. And as we've reported, Palantir data crunches the way that all of us use technology to look into you. So let's see if that is something that's been really dealt with in this new supposed NSA regulating bill that's being passed through the Senate, trying to be rushed through the Senate while there's all this other chaos going on no one really has the time to pay attention to. But, you know, maybe since they're doing all of this, we can do away with the TSA. Now that they're working with pre-crime, we have no use for the contrived security theater that is the TSA, right?
You expect the